So, it's been a while since I last uploaded a multi-floor elevator onto my channel, and in that year, well, I lost the world, specifically to an OS corruption, and I did over the last couple of days. It is currently the 16th of June, so yesterday on the 15th of June, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna attempt to recreate this. For me, that was last night, and I was finally able to, like, recreate it somewhat. It doesn't have all 7 floors like I believe the original had, but it doesn't really need to have all 7 floors, considering you basically just replicate the floor modules, and as long as your timings are right, which I think most of the time they will be, you might have to add like a tick or two of extra delay using observers on some floors. You should be fine. Anyways, it basically works the same way as before. Before, we have our decide whether or not you want auto launch. I'm just going to have this here so I can show off some of the redstone. So we have this button here, which we can just push. So that was floor 2, and as you can see, right here, floor 2's redstone block has activated, and if we were to fly up to floor 2 here, you can see the double piston extender has activated. If you activated, and then we can just hit this button to just manually launch our elevator for it to arrive at floor 2, where we will then automatically retract, and then after a short delay, the elevator will automatically return to the ground floor, and you can do this for any floor. As a matter of fact, say I have floor 1 extended, well, I can now select floor 3, for example, and it will activate and floor 1 will close. And I can even go to floor 2 and floor 1 and floor 4 all the way up there, and then manually launch it. Note, that kind of system is only necessary if you had the manual launch rather than automatic button launch, but I have a feeling some players might not want to have the automatic as soon as you push the button, especially considering some floors may be fairly far away if you were to, say, extend this out beyond the 7 floors. Theoretically, with the design that I have currently, it could be upwards of could have as many as 15 floors, though I'm not sure why you'd want to have 15 floors, especially since every floor you want, you have an additional block that you add onto this panel, and the redstone would become complicated with having to surf it through the floor on one of your floors if you wanted to reduce space and save space by having it over here, your button selector panel. But oop. Yeah. And then, so it all starts here with our blue circuitry. Oh, phylum. Oh, wait, no. Wrong elevator. With our blue circuitry. This is our button panel selector circuitry. And in our button panel, it's a simple RS NURLAT. I don't know what the circuitry is. It's a dropper-based one where you push the button, all of these turn off, which if you're selecting for the same floor, or for example, if I were to select that floor right there, which I believe is floor 4 again, after it's been activated, it would turn off then on again, which causes the floor to activate and then reactivate, but we don't really care about that, and then it'll switch to the next floor. Now, this light blue circuitry, which is just off of this, basically tells everything to reset, and basically this is where part of the timings come in. So it does the reset on that first off signal, which resets everything. And then when that goes off, it activates whatever floor was previously activated. But in order to counteract that, when the new floor activates, well, your reset signal goes in. But it's important that this reset signal arrives before the next floor. On that floor. So say I chose floor 2, well, it's important that floor 2's reset signal arrives before floor 2's activation signal. And this is somewhere where I struggled for a few times, and it just involved adding some delay, more observers here and there. Fortunately, it all works somehow. I'm not entirely sure. And another weird thing that I noticed is with our yellow circuitry, but I'll tell that when I'm going over the yellow circuitry. The next part of the circuitry that is attached, which is directly below it, is our cyan circuitry. This is the auto launch circuitry and our shutoff for the auto launch circuitry. So this is attached to our lever, and this moves this target block, which basically says, hey, these buttons will auto launch. And it basically takes the button signal. There would normally be redstone there, but since I haven't added the other floors, I decided to just remove that to say, hey, this is down here, the ones that are inactive. And then it goes into this long delay down to, at a decent delay so that you can get to your elevator such that elevator from your button. That delay would I'd probably want to make that delay longer if I had more floors, more buttons, or even potentially wire up an independent one for each extra delay for each button. Next up is our purple circuitry. There isn't much of it because it wasn't, but this is our activation circuitry, which goes in and pushes our redstone block, or is also attached to our desync. It's basically this piston storage system for our power, and the signal goes up, takes the signal from that comparator or there, whether it's on, and sends the signal up. And because there's two of these signals from when the comparator turns off, and it's only ever, and I should specify that this comparator signal is only ever detected from the one that was initially turned on and the one that then turns on. So if it's the same one, it's just going on the same circuit, and if it's a different one, it's going on the different circuit. The next circuit that we can go over, I will need to hop over to our small copy of our floor module to look at, and that is our green circuit. This is our auto return and our auto retraction of our double piston extender. So when the flying machine elevator goes by, the observer from the flying machine triggers this dropper. That observer detects that change, that the dropper's being triggered, and sends a signal through here. These three repeaters basically prevent it from getting signal from here and from the redstone block, so they are necessary, and unfortunately add 3 ticks of delay, but that's necessary. And then turns off from when the elevator arrives, but that's fine. And we'll put our redstone block back into the off position, thus closing our double piston extender. And then over here, it follows a long delay around to the other side of our elevator cavity to this note block, which it will then power, which the observer that tells it to go down goes down. And this is after a fairly long delay to give most of it. I haven't actually done the summing of the repeaters, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 4-tick repeaters, and I feel like that was more than enough of a delay to add. And this is one of the biggest changes that I made since my last design of this elevator. Was the pink wool was our double piston extender circuitry here. And last design, I can't remember what I had to do, but I think I had to do some weird stuff in order to get it to work. I think I even had to make the circuitry a bit bigger here, but here I'm able to have it as compact as possible. And basically, our pink wool goes through here, and then we use a jukebox. And the reason why we had to use a jukebox here was because I needed a block that was immovable, but also redirected redstone. And I wanted one that was solid, because there are immovable blocks that do redirect redstone, like the trapped chest, but, well, that would allow you to see the redstone. I don't really want you seeing. I want to see as few bits of redstone as possible. So that means the jukebox, the dropper, the piston head, and the note block, and that's as few as possible. And the pink circuitry here is just a simple double piston extender system where we have our regular piston at the front. This piston stops our elevator from moving, and then there's our sticky piston. Next bit of circuitry, I'm going to head over to the elevator while you're here to explain, since it's all here. We have the return circuitry. Now, or I should say, the calling circuitry, to be more specific. So when you push the button, you want to call your elevator. So the button gets pushed here, and it gets sent up to here, and the elevator goes down. However, because we're sending the signal down with these sticky pistons, there is a delay between till when it gets all the way down to the bottom and then the elevator getting launched. It's about a tick per piston, if I recall correctly. And there was another difficulty that I thankfully had already solved in my old design. How do I prevent it from sending a reset signal to every single floor it goes to? Well, I just use a transparent block, like a slab, which was well designed. Here I use a glass block since it was more accessible, but it doesn't really matter which one you use, as long as it's a transparent block that can't send the signal down. Another change that I made was using this monostable little pulse extender, just to help with the reliability of it, and only sending one pulse to the system rather than two. Yeah. Now, for whatever weird reason, and this is something really weird that I've noticed with the redstone, is that on this floor, this seems to work, having the 2-tick repeater here. But on the other floors, when you've had multiple floors tiled on top of each other, you only need a 1-tick delay, which is something that I noticed in order for it to work, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I haven't really analyzed it too much with carpet, but this calling circuitry, we've got two mechanisms here. Three mechanisms. The first one is to call the elevator, and that's this. This basically sends the signal all the way down here with a short delay into here, which launches into that note block, which launches our elevator up. This is also the circuitry that launches our elevator from the ground floor. Technically, I didn't need a glass block there, but for the sake of continuity, I just built it everywhere. There. And on your base, you have two circuits. You have that line up after this one, and it goes into this pulse. So these two circuits are, one, our activation circuit, which is this circuit, and our reset circuit. Now, from the top floor, we have to send a reset signal to all the lower floors. But we don't have to send it up, since we don't really worry about the above floors. If there was a floor above us that was selected, it'll be fine, and yeah, we can ignore, and if we're selecting another floor later, we should be fine. It's the lower floors, because those piston heads would interfere with our flying machines. So this resets everything below it. And up here we have our circuit. Okay, now it's important that this reset circuit arrives before this circuit. And I think that's part of the reasoning is that, but for whatever reason, 1 tick on our repeater here is fine, but 2 ticks on it requires 2 ticks up here. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but it works. So yeah, it just means that on the top floor of this, if you're using my redstone, you need the 2-tick there, and it will first reset, because our reset signal arrives first, and then extend the piston, and putting it in place. I might do this a couple times. I'm going to see if we can see that from our 1-tick. But it did that one time, and it basically pushes it across, and then basically it resets it, and because it arrives later, it comes across. Oh, well, it seems we accidentally summoned our elevator without even realizing it. And if y'all wanted to say have a very tippity top floor, you basically just put some blocks here. You might want to raise the gap between your very top floor and your last elevator button floor, and then you can just have a simple calling mechanism. That redstone would be pretty easy to add. And this is version 5.1. Another difference between this elevator and between the version 5.1 and version 4 of the elevator is the trace tone. It's no longer present. I realized that I actually didn't need it, and it means there's less redstone complication, and basically meant I was able to get it slightly more compact compared to the last version. Yeah, it still requires a bunch of stuff and has a lot of redstone wiring to it, but I feel like this design just overall was better built than version 4. And down here we actually have version 5.0, but it was different, and I ran into timing issues, and I ended up deciding, I'm gonna move everything over such that it's like this, and it ended up working out, thankfully. Whew! Managed to avoid catastrophe. Barely. If I can figure out how, I will attach the schematic of the floor and the actual flying machine in the description of this video, or at least a link to download them, so you can put them in your own world. You will need the Lightmatica to build it up, but yeah. Yeah, I can't attach a world download as I built this on a server. Here's the server. But yeah. Thank you. But thank you for taking the time to understand my complicated redstone. And if you're more of a technical Minecrafter, could you please tell me why on these lower floors it only needs 1 tick delay on that repeater, but on the very top floor I need a 2-tick delay on the repeater for it to work? If you could tell me why, that would be greatly appreciated. It's the one question. And again, this was built on a server. Remember, as you can see, I am on a server, and it is a paper server, which you can see on the right-hand side of my screen over there, underneath my underneath the chunk stuff and above the pie chart graph stuff. If you can see, it is a paper server, so it does work on server, assuming you have reasonable TPS. It does TPS on the server, but yeah. Anyways, this has been Spotty Underdog. I don't really know how to record videos, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.